we have here Eliana and Lilia, and we're going to be discussing the growth and the awareness of both dark art and different movements that started way back when and have evolved into something else entirely.
Sure. Yeah, me and Lilia are storyboard artists in the animation industry.
Yeah.
So we've always been into art and like the art movements and stuff like that, and we've obviously always like gravitated towards like goth culture.
Yeah.
And like the darker stuff, you know?
I would say I was probably about like 13 when I really got into it, because I had a friend group that was really into it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I've always liked darker art, darker themes. I remember I was 9, and I found this book in the library, and it was like very dark fiction for someone who was of that age, and I was immediately gripped. I was like, this is the stuff, this is the disturbing kind of content that I love, and
Yeah.
I never moved past it.
I remember watching Nightmare Before Christmas as like
Yes.
a little kid and being like, this is it.
This is it.
This is all I'm gonna get into from now on. But yeah, so always been into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and when was this? When did this happen? Again, what year was it again? Around the 80s, 90s?
Oh, well, the goth movement started in the 80s, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, and it was mostly the way that you got into it was through the music itself, and then it became a whole culture with the people who were really into that music. And I feel like now, like in this year, like nowadays, it's more about the art and getting into it through the art itself as a culture. So like gothic art, and then gothic fashion, gothic makeup.
You know, I would say a big thing for me, and a lot of people like kind of our age, was like the aesthetic movement on Tumblr.
Yes.
Actually.
Yes.
That was
Yeah.
hugely influential.
Yeah, in
which was-
Tumblr 2012 through 2013
Yeah.
was big with like gothic like photography and gothic like fashion, and like a lot of people were just like posting stuff constantly about
Yeah.
it. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was like kind of where I got really into it too.
Yeah, I think that's really where I got drawn to it. So around 2013 for
Yeah.
me, when Tumblr was still a really big, vibrant art scene and like community scene. And I originally got into it from the art, and then I had friends who introduced me to like, what was I listening to a lot of? Newer gothic stuff. So I was listening to a lot of Nine Inch Nails, but I was also listening to, you know, Depeche Mode, Recoil, I'm blanking on the other one I'm trying to think of. So stuff that came out of the goth scene a little later than some of the like original bands that were the goth bands.
Yeah, it's kind of like the punk movement where like a lot of older punk fans consider like newer punk to be pop punk or like not truly punk.
Yeah.
But like it's all a part of the same movement. It's
Yeah.
just aging as like time goes on. So there's younger fans getting into it.
I found that there's like I was doing a deep dive in Wikipedia at one point. It turns out most of my favorite music artists were all influenced by one another.
Yeah.
And it's like this ecosystem.
Yeah, I feel like that's how it always happens. It's
You
like
get sucked into it.
you're like, oh, I like this artist, and then you like
Yeah.
go look for more, and you're like, oh, they're influenced by this artist,
Yeah.
who is influenced by this one, who I like, who's
Turns
that
out
one.
they're all friends.
Yeah. So I feel like it's also a lot easier with the internet now than it was like when the culture started, because it was more of an intimate thing, and now it's more of like a big like culture for like just like a general thing.
And I mean, a lot of the goth events we went to, we found just online.
Yeah, we found this online, like this specific event. A lot of the events that we go to for the goth like community are just, we find them online, like on Instagram or on TikTok or on Tumblr, so stuff like that.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely a growing scene, probably because of the accessibility
Yeah.
of being able to find this stuff and be exposed to this stuff and make friends within these communities and whatnot.
Yeah, because people are really open and really nice in this community. So we went to
Goth clubs are my favorite clubs for that
yeah,
reason.
we went to an event last week called Blasphemy, which was a very small LA like gothic art kind of fair market, and it was so nice. We talked to so many people who were just like so like welcoming and being like, oh yeah, like I love your outfit, I love the way you do your makeup, like here's some of my art. And it was just like getting to meet people and follow them on Instagram and talk to a lot of people about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's fun to way to make friends if you're
I
going to be going out.
It's so funny too, because it's such like a, you would expect people to be, you know, really into dark art, really into gruesome art,
Yeah.
to not be super kind.
But
and
they
welcoming.
always are.
They always are.
Yeah. And I feel like it's because of like the origin of it, where it's like, it was a thing that was like for outcasts and people who like did not fit in. So the people who are into it now are still kind of the same way, where they're like very welcoming, like anyone can be a part of this. Like if you like the music, if you like clothes, if you like the art, you don't have to dress this way. You can just like enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know?
You guys had mentioned earlier that it become much more global because of social media.
Yeah.
But do you see any influence that Japan has in regards to Goth? Because
Oh, yeah.
their Goth is a little bit different because
yeah.
originally it was more based off of Gothic Lolita
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
on. But it was quite different because it had some of the refined art, and design aspects. Even though it was Goth, it was quite different from American Goth because of the fact that it was into the artistry of the outfits and the pattern designs and the whole presentation was, and just like Japan as a culture, they're more in tune with the details
Yeah.
Yeah.
of the design
Yeah.
as opposed to, it was a fashion statement as well, but at the same time, their craftsmanship was something that they focused on. So
Yeah.
you want to talk about how there's a contrast between the Japanese Goth versus American Goth
Oh, yeah.
and what you guys think about that?
There's a big contrast.
I mean, like I said, I don't dress this way anymore, but when I was a young teenager, I was really into a fashion style called, I want to say it was called Mori or Mori Strega, but Strega itself is kind of this witchy style that, if I remember correctly, originally came out of Lolita, actually. So versus like, you think of kind of this flavor of goth that comes out of the British punk scene,
Yeah.
which is much more grungy, much more DIY.
It's less focused on little details
Yeah,
too, because I feel
yeah.
like the Lolita fashion originally how it was very put together, very like symmetrical.
Well, you want to look like a doll.
Yeah.
Like, you would look like a living doll.
Yeah,
Is the whole
so
thing. So
being very symmetrical, having a lot of little details,
Yeah.
having very like perfect makeup.
Yeah.
Whereas like coming out of the punk scene, it was just like I rolled out of a puddle, and here I am.
here I am, freshly dressed as a tar pit.
Yeah, and I feel like with the popularity of like anime now too,
Yeah.
it's like spreading into like things are just becoming different like a lot of stuff is influencing each other, so it's less defined now than like Lolita or like
Yeah.
specific punk culture for like gothic fashion. Like how I was saying earlier that I'm a really big fan of Kyu Hayashida. I really like Dorohedoro, I really like Dye Dark, and that type of art style that's just very like grungy and like sketchy has become like Dorohedoro got a show on Netflix. It's become way more popular. Junji Ito has gotten tons of shows.
Yeah.
They got reanimated recently, right, on Netflix?
I think so.
Yeah, and like you can get them in Barnes and Noble. So stuff like that is like super mainstream now. So it's becoming like
Manga, especially.
Yeah, manga
Barnes and Noble
especially.
section for manga is huge.
Yeah, they've completely rebranded their whole store to
Yeah.
have like the manga section like front and center because so many people go to it.
I was in France recently, and in France they have a lot of little towns that are really idyllic, and all these towns are self-contained, and they have like their own grocery store and they have their own bookstore. And every single time I went into any of these bookstores, they had a huge wall of manga. And comics are popular in France, but manga being so popular there is also new. So I think it is really a global rise in like Japan having a lot more cultural presence outside of Japan. I think that has both affected, the regular scene and then also the dark art scene.
Yeah, and I think it's gonna be cool to see because
Yeah.
it's new, like with like the rise of anime and manga. Just because I think from the pandemic it became a lot more popular because people were at home
Yeah.
and had like not a lot to do. So why not get into reading or watching like a cool cartoon? I think it'll be really cool to see like how it affects like the fashion and music, because I think it already is.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Like you see things like on TikTok where people are like getting into like dressing like streetwear, like dressing like your favorite anime character, but make it streetwear.
I like
stuff
the
that.
Harajuku scene.
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that influence. I love those
Yeah,
outfits.
yeah, and that's all coming to America too.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a band that was called Strawberry Switchblade. And they dressed in kind of like gothic Lolita, kawaii Lolita, and they were kind of like a new wave band during the 80s. And they were popular in Japan. If you look at the fashion, how they dressed, you can see the inception of the Lolita movement.
Oh, cool.
So if you have a chance, go look at the group Strawberry Switchblade.
So did they like make it popular, more like well known within Japan, like the Lolita fashion statement?
Yeah, it didn't really seem to exist prior to them coming out in
Okay.
Japan. And
Interesting.
so you'll look, if you have a chance, take a look at it. But what we're seeing here is the cross-culturalization due to the internet.
Yeah.
Because again, the Gothic Lolita or the Kawaii Lolita was influenced by maybe Western music and so on, and then they influence the Western, and the West influences them. So it's kind of like this I guess, what do you want to call this?
Fusion.
Yeah, this fusion of everything. So that's something you should take a look at. But also another thing is that do you guys find that it's becoming much more popular right now? Again, the dark art scene, because you had mentioned that. Do you feel like is it growing, or do you feel like it's just kind of chugging along right now? But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How do you feel?
I mean, I think it's growing. Like if you look,
Yeah.
I mean, look where we are.
I mean, part of me wonders. I think it's growing, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm already in this scene.
Yeah, so it's
I
hard
meet
to
people
see.
in this scene.
Yeah.
So I'm not really certain.
It's hard to say when you're already inside of a scene like this and you meet all these new people and like you see all these new events, because to us it's like, wow, there's so much going on that we can do, and like
Yeah.
we're always finding new things and new people. But from the outside, it might not look like that.
I feel like the venues have gotten bigger though.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah.
Like, we went to last year. Every year they do like a big vampire ball in LA, and I don't remember where the venue was, but it was a big one.
I don't know.
And they had the guy who plays Guillermo in What We Do in the Shadows, like hosting it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So I
He'd be
mean,
a fun host.
just by that alone, like a celebrity is coming to these goth events. So
Yeah.
like, I think it's getting it seems like it's getting bigger from the inside, but I feel like to really figure that out, you'd have to have an outside view or like be coming into it.
I mean, I know vampires are always like a kind of like a cornerstone of things that people like that are technically more on the dark side of things. But I feel like that's really an entry point.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, What We Do in the Shadows getting a TV show is telling.
Yeah, and how
Twilight's
popular
getting
it is,
redone.
yeah.
So I would say I think it's growing. I mean, I have noticed goth people both. I live here, and I used to live in Minneapolis, St. Paul. But me saying I've noticed goth people out and about, again, these are both cities with big alt scenes, so I don't really know if that's
Yeah,
the
it's a
norm.
little bit harder, especially if you're in a city that's more conservative or
Yeah.
more religious.
Yeah,
because
you don't see it nearly as much.
Yeah, because you don't see it as much because it's looked down upon, and also like you can get like if you live in a small town, you'll get ostracized
Yeah.
for liking the things that you like.
Yeah.
But yeah, in big cities, it's definitely a big movement and a big culture. I mean, this is like my free time. Like, I love going to events like this. I like talking to artists and making new friends. Like, it's kind of like what I do outside of work. So it makes me happy. It makes me happy to like meet people and like see people and like compliment people, how they're dressed, like their art, their stuff like that. It's just like a fun time for me.
Yeah, and for me it's like, it's both that and then also it's the kind of literature I'm drawn to, it's the kind of fashion I'm drawn to, it's the kind of music I'm drawn to. I didn't so much like look up, this is what, dark art is, this is what goth is, I'm going to embrace this stuff so much as I just kind of fell into it sideways, and I'm like, I like this kind of fashion, I like this kind of music, it all just kind of go together in this culture, so I ended up, being here, because I don't know, it brings me happiness. I just like it.
Yeah, I mean, we've met so many people through it that are just so kind, and like also met people who have like recommended us to like different events. They're like, oh, I'm vending here, I'm gonna be at this event. It's like,
we just had someone we missed an event. We just had someone tell us, they're hosting it again in July.
What was it?
Lesbian Goth Night.
The Lesbian Goth Night.
Yeah.
Hit that up.
Yeah.
I really want to go to that.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one.
It's like hosted at a club. It's for all women, obviously.
Yeah.
It just sounds like a really fun time, and that's another way. Like if you're queer, it's
a big queer community.
Yeah,
we both are. So I think
very big community.
It becomes a bit of a safe space.
Yeah.
And like you can express yourself in any way you like, and it's accepted. While also like being a safe space, and everyone's like, okay, this is what's going to happen here. Do you consent to this? You know what going in. They're really good about boundaries.
Yeah, and also there's not one way to express yourself within this community too, because I mean originally you had this type of fashion like the Lolita and then like the grunge, and like that was kind of it.
Yeah.
And if you went outside of those things, people were like, why are you like
Now it's much more eclectic. I've had people ask me like, "Oh, what flavor of goth do you like?" And I'm like, "I don't know. All the ones I've looked up don't seem to fit."
You don't have to fit into one
No,
either.
exactly. Yeah.
Like we've gotten so many like people come up to us today and be like, "We love the way you look,"
Yeah.
and it's like we don't really fit into one category with the way that we
Other than
dress
black.
or present ourselves. Yeah. Other than
Got the
color
black
black.
down. You know, it's something to do outside of work. This whole culture and like events and people to engage with and whatnot. And I'm always pleasantly surprised anytime I go to anything. And again, it's just, I like the art, I like the music,
Yeah.
I like being surrounded by it.
Yeah, we've been this way since we were little.
Yeah.
Like we've always been drawn to this kind of thing,
Yeah.
so I can't see that changing. Like,
Not a phase.
I'll be dressing in black when I'm like 75 years old.
Okay, great. And then in closing, do you have anything to say to other people who are interested or someone that might want to be involved or be part of the community out there? Anything?
Yeah. I mean, it's a very welcoming community.
It's really nice.
If you want to get involved, even if you're not in a big city, you will find people that like the things that you like and agree with what you like. Even just like walking on the street, if you have something little, people like that like represents you. People will stop you and be like, "I love that."
Yeah.
And that's a great way to meet friends, like make friends and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the more you meet people, the more they're going to introduce you to other people and to other events and whatnot. Like, I would say most of the stuff we know about is just through word of mouth. People telling us about it. Being like, you should go to this, it's super fun. So really a welcoming community.
Yeah. Especially like even if you can't get like in person, like finding events online and like looking at like following all these people, like these people all know each other.
They do.
So like once you like get in and start talking to people, like you kind of fall into it.
A lot of these vendors were at Blasphemy, weren't
Yeah,
they?
yeah. Like we went to Blasphemy last week, and a lot of the vendors that are here were there, and we got to talk to them again and be like, "Oh, hi, we saw you last week. Like, what's going on? What have you been doing? You know?
How's it going?
Yeah.
How's the event cycle going?
Yeah. You just have to be like, you have to put yourself out there, like anything.
It's worth it though.
Yeah, it is worth it.